Hello, everybody. How are you? My name is John Fleming, and I am the former Chief Planner for the City of London, now doing work up at the University of Western Ontario with the Human Environments Analysis Lab and the Centre for Urban Policy and Local Governance, having lots of fun with smart people up there. I've been invited today to moderate this session, and I'm pretty excited about it. The session is, as I hope you can see on the screen, this is coming from my screen, it is the Place Matters Conference. And today, we are going to be talking about influencing municipal policy, those local decisions that affect our lives so significantly. We've got 4 great speakers that I'm going to introduce a little bit later on. And I've intentionally shown here our sponsors. These are sponsors of the event as a whole, and some really great people that you'll see down on the right-hand side that are people that actually planned this whole conference. Big tip of the hat to them. They've done a great job. Really enjoyed yesterday. Looking forward to future events as well. So we're talking about place in this conference. And I think it's really important that if we're going to be talking about place, to take a moment to acknowledge the people in this place, the original people in this place. And I'd like to acknowledge the history of the traditional territory, honor the longstanding relationship of the 3 local First Nations of this land and place in southwestern Ontario. So the Attawandaron peoples once settled this region alongside the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples, and use this land as their traditional hunting grounds. The 4th longstanding Indigenous group that lived in this region is the Napuak. We'd also like to recognize the 3 nation communities downriver of what we would know as the Thames River, but it was originally known as the Deshkanjibi and also often referred to as the Antler River. And those First Nations include the Chippewa of the Thames First Nations, the Oneida Nation of the Thames, and the Munsee Delaware Nation. The organizers have expressed that their intention is to continue to listen, learn from these Indigenous people, work to restore the natural area back to its original beauty, and support local Indigenous initiatives. I think it's also important that we reflect for a moment, because we're talking about influencing municipal policy and decisions, to think about the Black Lives Matter movement that's ongoing and in Canada, North America, and beyond, and to just think about the discrimination that has worked its way into and institutionalized its way into processes across Canada. We should think about the inequities that exist, identify them wherever we can, and work to eliminate them wherever we can. Let's see if I can get this going here. Last night, I had a great time listening to Dave Meslin together here with Megan Stacy, and he was great. He talked about just doing it. And in this case, he was talking about, why are we going to Sugar Bush? In our own neighborhood, we have maple trees. Let's tap them. Let's get sugar water out of them in our own neighborhood. Let's boil that sugar water, distill it into wonderful neighborhood-oriented maple syrup. We made it, and we're sharing it amongst ourselves. That's the just do it part. And that just doing things does affect municipal decision-making, and he had some good examples of that. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the formal decision-making that I was involved with and I saw firsthand. And it's pretty simple, right? Because most of the decisions made are made by who? At a local level, city council. And all you have to do as a person is influence city council, right? Pretty straightforward. However, there's often, and no matter what the issue is, there's often a city staff lead of some kind. And they're going to influence the city council with their report. And so, yeah, should you as a person be trying to influence the city staff person as well? Well, the city staff person has a manager that's influencing them. Should you be trying to influence that person? A managing director. The managing director is part of a senior leadership team that tries to kind of organize and coordinate things. There's all these influences that are going on that work their way into the final influence of the decision maker. Other departments are at the table speaking to that city staff lead and expressing their opinion. Starting to look like maybe it's not simple, in fact, not at all. Well, let's layer on some more. There's these agencies, there's the province that is affecting these decisions. There's often plans, regulations, rules, laws. There's different agencies coming to the table that are also in a lot of cases trying to affect those decision makers, council. Then there's committees. The council usually doesn't make decisions unless there's a standing committee that first talks it over, often allowing the community the opportunity to participate in the conversation. So there's the committee that's affecting and making recommendations to council. There's a committee chair who has a lot of sway on the committee. There's the mayor who plays a leadership role and often makes statements which sways again and influences council on the decision. We're turning from it's simple to it's not simple to it's complex. It's very complex, and there's often other stakeholders like developers, interest groups, direct stakeholders in whatever issue it is in the business community, and that's just a handful of them. So it's a very complex system. It's not as simple as just understanding there's decision makers and we need to influence the decision makers. And usually as a person, you've got in a community a whole bunch of others that have different opinions that are working with you. So it's a complex situation. So what's the common thread behind all of that? So I don't mean to overwhelm you, but I want to sort of reveal that you got to think about all of those different influencers of the decision and how you might influence some of those. But the common thread is that these are all people. It's a big system, it's a machine, but the people are people. And don't forget that people have needs. They're pretty common. These are most people, so I've very, very much simplified. People want to succeed in achieving their own goals. They want to be seen as succeeding. They don't like surprises. They like some good surprises, but not the bad kind. They don't want to be embarrassed. So I'm talking about everybody that's in this maze here. They work best with people they have come to know, that they have a relationship and that they trust. They don't love conflict if they can avoid it. They'd like to. They like to have backing, so support from allies. They love to have backing from facts and data and support from the community. And they don't want to do a huge amount of work if they can help it. So these are the kinds of things that go with all of these players. And you have to think about that when you're considering how can you make impact. So I want to distill that now because that's very complicated, but it really comes down to thinking about these things. Who are the influencers and the decision makers? And think about who is it of those that you need to influence in order to get to that end point that you're hoping to get to. What do influencers and decision makers need? So what is it that they need in order to move forward the direction you'd like them to move forward on? Have you built relationships and trust, or can you start to do that? Are you clear on what you want? So I have seen that in the past where there are groups that are looking for something, but they're not exactly sure and they're not united around what it is. And then do you have allies at any of these levels that can help to support what you're looking to make happen? So it's a little bit different from the usual conversation around influencing decision-making at a local level. But I think it's one from the inside looking out, just demonstrating there's a complexity to it, but you can work through that complexity. And these are some of the key questions that you need to think about. So today we have 4 wonderful speakers that are going to be covering different elements of this conversation. Before I get into that and we have our first speaker, I want to do a poll. So we have the wonderful Skylar Frank here, one of the Placemaking Matters conference organizers, and she's going to help us do this poll. And my understanding, at the bottom of your screen, you are going to see a button that is going to allow you to provide some input into this poll. And you're also going to see some of the results. Skylar, does that sound right? In real time?
Yes. I've launched it, so people should see it now in front of them. I don't know if anyone can give me verbal consent. Dean's shaking his head yes.
Okay. And so the big question is, what types of ways have you tried to influence local decisions? And it's list the various ways: phone campaigns, talking to politicians, media campaign, letter writing, etc. So,
And John, I would say in a great surprise, poll number 2 has shown up with poll number 1. So there's 2 questions.
okay, let's do them both. In this world of Zoom, we roll with the punches. So Skylar, are you seeing any results yet? I'm not asking for what they are, but.
Yeah, we have about 27% of people have voted. So maybe give it 10 more seconds and then I'll wrap it up and then show it so people can see what the results are.
Fantastic. So we're not looking for anything cast in stone, but give us some ideas so that others can see what you're thinking about. What types of ways you've tried to influence local decisions and what you've done.
It's hard to not click everything for the second one. It's impossible, actually. Yeah.
Okay, we're at 65, 67, still got a couple voters out there. I'm gonna wrap it up in 10 seconds. No more funding to the postal system. No, I'm just kidding. Just joking about like people not getting their votes in time. Anyway, I'm gonna end polling at 75% of people have responded. And share results.
Yeah.
Wow.
So interesting. So some of the ways that you tried to influence local decisions, signed a petition was the winner of all of them. And you know, one of our speakers today is going to be Councillor Ariel Kayabaga. And so I'm going to ask her that question about how effective petitions are when she's looking at making decisions and what it means in terms of the number of people on the petition, et cetera. Emailed politician. I know when I was at City Hall, I heard from politicians a lot about, I've received a lot of emails on this issue. Can you help me out? Attended a protest or a rally, talking to politicians. And I think those are wrote a letter. That's amazing that even the word wrote a letter, or that phrase is still something that is out there because so much has been automated, but this is fantastic. So it gives you a sense, I think. Skylar, have I missed anything? Oh, there's more down here.
Yeah, if you want to do the second one.
Okay, why don't you do the second one? What municipal issues are you interested in influencing or changing?
For sure. So this is supposed to come later, but I appreciate everyone for participating. So the affordable housing came in at number 1, with 67% of people here are interested in influencing or changing affordable housing. Number 2 is creating a more equitable city. And I'd say number 3 is climate emergency with 55%. Of course, all of these are really important, but we wanted to get a sense of what people are leaning towards.
That's great. And improving the local economy is always strong. Green recovery. That's great. Okay, so with that poll now behind us, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Her name is Dr. Kate Graham, and she's the Director of Research at the Canadian Urban Institute and teaches in political science departments at Western University and Huron University College. She spent a decade working in local government, most recently as the Director of Community and Economic Innovation at the City of London. I had the opportunity to work closely with Kate. She's one of my all-time favorite people, and so glad that you're here. I've got a question for you, a burning question.
Okay.
So my question to you is, from the inside, can you talk about how to go about presenting ideas to City Council and staff? So when I say from the inside, both you and I have been at that local government level and played the part of municipal bureaucrat. So I'm wondering if you had seen really effective ways of presenting ideas, either to staff, yourself, or others, or to City Council.
Sure. Well, thanks very much, John. And hi, everybody. It is nice to see you. And I just wanted to start by saying congratulations to the organizers for transitioning this to an online format so well. What a weird year this has been for everyone. And I don't know about you, but I am like thirsting for human connection right now. It's I really miss seeing people and being able to get together in person. But in the meantime, these adaptations are a great way to stay connected. So thanks for putting this on, and thanks for the chance to be a part of it. I definitely have seen some examples, to your question, John, where things were done really well. But before we get into that, I just wanted to make a couple of, these are probably sort of obvious basic points, but that I think are really important for us to keep in mind when we're talking about influencing municipal government. There's sort of those basics that are sometimes important to be reminded of. When I looked at the poll results to that last question, it's a good reminder that this is not a representative sample of people. This is a very engaged group. If we were to ask the general public how many people have contacted an elected official or started a petition, the numbers would not be that high. So some of this may be things that you already know, but again, hopefully helpful framing for the discussion today. So the first one is, we're here talking about local government. And most of us, when we were students, we learned about how government in Canada works. And the thing that's often not mentioned, but that's really important, is that most of what we learned about how government works in Canada doesn't really apply at the local level. Local government is a fundamentally different system of government. So if we were talking about influencing provincial politicians or federal politicians, there are political parties involved. There are cabinets that meet in camera or in secret where you can't get access to them. Power is concentrated. So you have a minister, for example, of transportation who has concentrated power over things like transportation. When you look at local government, it doesn't look like that. Right? There's very few meetings in closed session, so most of these discussions are happening in the public forum. Except for in a couple of provinces, there are no political parties, so it's a much messier kind of decision making. And really importantly, there's no equivalent of a minister of anything. So instead, you are dealing with a group where power is dispersed across many people. And the reason I think it's important to start there is that if you are trying to influence a decision, it's a really different process at the local level. And the important difference, in this goes directly to John's beautiful diagram, is that it's not just trying to influence one person or even one body. It's much bigger than just trying to influence city council, for example. You have a lot of different actors involved, and a good advocacy strategy, and certainly what I witnessed when I was at City Hall, the most effective strategies are the ones where the people driving it have thought about all of the different groups. And that includes people who are not at City Hall. It includes other stakeholder groups. It includes the media. It includes average citizens. It includes people who may have some tangential connection to the issue that you're talking about, but show up to support the cause. So it's a much more complicated strategy, and I think much tougher, but I also think it's a lot more democratic. So one of the reasons I love local government, one of the reasons I think there's such a great opportunity for us as citizens to influence local government is that by design, power is dispersed across many groups. And so I think the opportunities for us to influence decisions are much more, they're much more ready for the taking at the local level.
I agree with you. And can I interrupt for just one moment?
Please do.
Okay?
Yeah, of course.
We're going to keep it conversational, so I'm going to just interrupt for a second and say the media. I think you hit on a really interesting point there in terms of how some people understand how to use the media in order to influence council in a positive way. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think, again, just to kind of frame this discussion, okay, so if you are an advocate and you are trying to have something happen in the community, I think too often we focus on that outcome. We focus on, I want the vote to end up this way. And instead, I think we need to focus one step before that. This is the currency we're playing in when it comes to advocacy: political will. What you are trying to do, if you want to advocate for something, is build political will towards your cause. If that's done well, the outcome will follow. At least this is what I observed when I was at City Hall. In my academic work, I've interviewed hundreds of local elected officials all across the country, trying to get a sense of, what is it that actually influences their decision making. And political will is the magic ingredient that you're going for. And to John's question, the media plays a big role in that. So things like how an issue is framed, who is talking about it, what kind of voices are showing up to support that cause, what larger issues it's connected to. So a project, for example, if it's tied to the broader objectives around climate change or affordability or inequality, being able to frame things in that way can be a really powerful way of building political will in support of what you're trying to do. So And John, do you want to speak to the role of media more specifically? Because I certainly found that when the media coverage leading up to a decision at City Council was in favor of it, the odds of it going through went way up. So building that political will and that framing through media is really powerful tool.
Yeah, and I'm gonna, if I have time and a chance, I'll also speak to that with Councillor Carabaga, but for sure. And I love what you're saying about political will. It's like, how do we get the momentum, the political momentum moving in a certain direction? And it usually doesn't come from, my experience is it doesn't come from one conversation. I think what you were talking about is thinking about all the different people that are out there, but also how do we build relationships? How do we understand who's really going to be able to get that momentum moving? And that's what I think that you're describing. Am I in the right ballpark there?
Exactly. Yeah. So certainly in my experience, something that was a really strong advocacy campaign, something that had that energy and enthusiasm behind it, where they had the political will going into when the decision was made and the outcome was going to be determined. That political will usually involved a couple of things, and that's what I'll speak to very quickly, and then I'd love it if we can open up to more of a discussion. But generally speaking, and there's lots of research on this, which is very helpful, there's a few ingredients to being able to build political will. So the first one is having a clear solution. So if there's something that you want, and John mentioned this, sometimes it's sort of unclear. There's a problem, but nobody really knows what to do about it. And at least in my observation, it's very tough for those things to reach some kind of a conclusion that people are happy with. So having a clear solution presented that people can understand, that's fairly simple, and that has that positive kind of will behind it is really important. It sounds so obvious, but there are many times where things are talked about, in the public sphere, within political or city council or other elected bodies, where it's not altogether clear what people want to have happen. There's agreement that there's a problem, but we don't have agreement on solution. So being able to present something really clear is an important part of success. So that's number one, having a clear solution. Number two is how the issue is framed. And again, this would be the difference between a really successful advocacy strategy and one that's less successful, is think really deliberately about what kind of context you want to put what you're trying to get done into. So for example, a cycling project can be about the environment. It can be about the economy and affordability and saving families money. It can be about health and fitness. It can be about the way that a city is built. It can be framed in any one of those contexts. Any one of them can be successful depending on the context that we're in. So I think being deliberate about understanding the interests of the people that you're talking to. If you're talking to someone who is a climate advocate, on council or on city staff, that is the angle that I would frame what you want within. Understand who you're talking to and what they care about, frame the issue accordingly. And again, in my observation anyway, it's a much more, you increase your odds of success quite a bit by framing it in a way.
Smart. And you're thinking about the person you're talking to, that you're trying to influence, and what they need out of it, or what their value system would let them support, as opposed to always thinking about it from a very straight line, linear, this is my way of looking at it. I think that's so smart. Okay, framing. Yeah, what's the next one you had?
Yeah, so clear solution, framing. And then the third one, and this one is so key, is champions. So in an ideal scenario, you are not the only person who is talking to the person you're trying to influence about this idea. So if it's the mayor, for example, or your city councilor, or a member of staff, ideally, there are many, many people around that person talking to them. And in a dream world, people who they have really strong relationships with, and they're already in really positive working relationships with. So, you can chirp at someone on Twitter all you want, and I think that can be helpful to an extent. But certainly I witnessed campaigns that were much more deliberate about finding a group of people who already had strong connections and relationships. So organizations like the Urban League, for example, phenomenal relationships with many, many people at City Hall. They've been established over a very long time, making sure that you've spoken to many different people within an organization like the Urban League. Reforest London, Dean's organization, he'll speak about, they've got great relationships with many organizations in the community, many people at City Hall. So finding champions outside City Hall who are also talking to the people that you want to influence, again, is I think a key ingredient to success. So long story short, answer to your question, those three things.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's so smart. And I think that I always love the integrity that you bring to these kinds of conversations around the positive side of it and how you can achieve probably more with the positive than the negative. Sometimes the negative's definitely needed. You need some friction sometimes, but as my mom always told me, you get more bees with honey than you do with vinegar. I think that's true in this kind of situation too. So let me now go to Skylar, who is helping us, Kate, to assemble a question. And so I think that people have had the opportunity, is that right, Skylar, to submit questions, or do we have to open that up?
So people have had the opportunity, but so far none have come in specific to this. There was a question about using the poll feature. So if people want to put some questions in, you can. It's at the bottom of your screen. And I can also pull them up maybe when some pop up kind of in the future. We don't have any so far.
In the absence of a question, I've got one, a burning question, another burning question, and that is, give me an example of one that you've seen. I'm going to put you on the spot, I'm sorry, but give me an example of one that you said, wow, they were masterful in the way that they framed it, the way that they got the champions together, the way that they brought this issue forward so effectively and actually had a good outcome.
Sure. So one that's been on my mind because it's in the news once again, and it's still continuing, it's the community diversity and inclusion strategy. So I had the privilege of being a staff support to this. This is one of the last things that I was able to work on during my time at City Hall. And it was tackling a complex, difficult, systemic, ingrained issue in London, which is oppression and racism. There were a number of serious incidents in the community that led to a strong political will to do something, but it was not clear what. And so we put a call out. There are more than 200 Londoners who came forward to listen to one another's experiences and build a plan. A plan was developed and taken to City Council, and the plan was approved unanimously. It was the last council meeting that I was able to go to as a staff member. Mm-hmm. And the reason I point to that as such a successful example was because there are many people who, even on this call I see in the participants list, who are part of this process. When that was presented to council, it was a packed gallery of citizens who had invested their time and talent into putting this plan together. There were clear solutions, very specific things in the plan that the community wanted to see done. It had been framed in a very positive way, where many of the organizations who were already working on equity issues in the community were a part of that process. And so it was framed in there were parts of the plan that were framed in kind of different ways, but generally speaking, it was really positive. And there were clear champions and literally an image of the gallery around. And so when it came to City Council, it was one of the examples where it was a good reminder of why local government can really matter, because it was a chance for people to be able to create the kind of city that they want to live in and participate in it in a much more meaningful way than just, showing up and voting or other traditional methods of political engagement. So yeah, really positive, and I see that the work is still going, and that Ariel has been a big champion of this on council. Many others have too, but it's been the community that's driving it, and I think that's why it's been so successful.
Okay, well, you just gave me a great segue.
Also, if I can unsegue you, sorry, there is a question. Do you want another one?
Okay.
Or do you want your segue?
If we're not exactly on time. So
I won't be mad. I'll blame myself.
Okay.
Good. One of the questions is, how do we get the silent majority to give their voice?
Ooh. So that is it. Is this to me?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone? Oh, if we knew the answer to that, I would be writing a book about it right now. This is a notoriously difficult group to mobilize by virtue of how we define them. They're not politically active or not actively using their voice. One of the ways that I think often their voices do become a part of the decision-making process is through data on polling. So if you have an issue that that the general public is supportive of, but only 3 people are showing up at the meetings, and it doesn't seem like this is something that a lot of people care about, but that generally the public opinion is on your side, I think doing polling can be a really effective way of saying, we surveyed Canadians, or we surveyed Londoners, and turns out that 86% of people also believe that we need more bike lanes, or we need green bins, or we need whatever the cause is that you're working on. It's a way that those people don't necessarily, they may not be motivated enough that they're going to show up in a gallery and sit through a meeting for hours and hours, but when put to the question, they agree. So I think polling is one way of being able to engage more voices and add their voices to your cause.
And we've got a speaker coming up that's going to talk about facts and surveying. So you gave me two great segues, but I'm going to start with your first one. And I'm going to say, when you're talking about local decision makings in council, you can't do any better than having a member of council here to have the conversation with us. And so I'd like to introduce Councillor Ariel Kayabaga. She's balancing her roles, and this is her bio, balancing her roles as a single mother, city councillor, community activist, passionate city builder. Don't know exactly how you balance all of those things, but she's finding a way to do it. Ariel's story is one of breaking barriers, overcoming adversity, and defying expectations. I had the opportunity before I retired from the city to work with Councillor Kayabaga on the Core Area Action Plan and some of the Victoria Park work and some contentious stuff that was really exciting work, and really appreciated working with you on that. I've got a question for you. So here I am as a talk show host, and let's see how I can do here. So I'm wondering if you can give us an example. So we've heard of some of the techniques that some people have used or could use in order to affect council, but I'm interested in your opinion on some of that. And before I go to the question I was just about to ask, I want to ask you about the those petitions where there's you receive something probably by email, maybe it's in your inbox, it's 100 pages long, and you've got 100 times maybe 20 people, so you got a lot of people, a couple thousand people on a petition. What's your reaction to that, and how much does that affect the way you think about an issue, a local issue that's in front of you?
Thank you, John. It's good to see you again, and hi everybody, and thanks for having me here tonight. I just want to start by saying that one of the ways I manage or balance my life, there's going to be some noise in the background. My son is around. We co-work together. We eat in the same space, and we do all the things together. So if you do hear him, I apologize. Sometimes he forgets that I've asked him to be quiet for an hour. It's a lot for an 11-year-old to be quiet for a whole hour. Yeah, so I let him participate as much as he wants. Yeah. So I was, thank you, Kate, for all the comments that you've made and all the things that your knowledge and wisdom that you've shared. There's so much things that I wanted to add on to everything you were saying, because I was really thinking like, yeah, there's little pieces here and there. The part where you said it's important to know your audience as well, the people who you're trying to influence, and understand them and approach them in ways that will speak to them. So personally, I'm not a fan of petitions, especially the ones that it's 10 people have signed a petition and an entire policy can change around 10 people writing a petition. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think it's important that when we are doing local politics, we really focus on grassroots organization, because local politics means people, and it is the most accessible I guess political realm that anybody can have, and I'm always very surprised at how many people do not access that, because it's really accessible, and your counselors are often your neighbors. They're often people that you see at the coffee shop, at different places. We are very, very, very accessible. However, change sometimes takes a long time. And one of the reasons why some people don't get involved in local politics is because of the language that we use. So language also matters, and the way that we communicate a lot of the policies and the work that we do. I found that one of the easiest ways for me to get a lot of engagements on things is when I break down a policy to people in regular language that we normally use, and then also make it specific to who you're understanding your audience, understanding people who follow you, understanding people who need to be involved, understanding the missing faces and missing voices, and finding ways to communicate it in their language. So this goes back to the theory of in-reach instead of outreach. And I think a lot of us in municipal politics and local politics need to do that more often, to do a lot of in-reach, reaching out to communities. It's not enough to say people are not involved. I think it's our job to actually go out and engage people and make sure that they're involved. And I think, John, you and I have talked about this when we were working on the communication part of how to move City Hall from, you know, our current communications status to the future. So there's been a lot of changes in the last couple of I'm going to say months. So paper petitions for me are not the biggest thing. I want to see who's signing the petitions. I want to know how far and how wide we were able to engage people. So this is why sometimes using every communication route, whether it's social media, emailing, calling, is also being considered. I think if we just took time to take the petitions that we get at City Hall once in a while and we changed all of the policies based on that, we would have a city that is only tailored to specific people, because not everybody has time to sit around and write a petition by hand or submit it. There's websites like change.org that has created a platform where we can create bigger petitions. But I think what they can do is find ways to get those petitions to reach the elected officials. There's another tool that I've recently found and discovered through Local Progress, which is a body that organizes a lot of progressive grassroots organizers and politicians. It's located in the United States, but I've recently connected with them, and through them I've actually picked up a lot of tools. And one of the tools that I found is a tool that you can connect your petition to your address. Basically, you put in your address and it tells you who your municipal politician is, who your provincial, your federal, and it generates all that stuff for you. And all you have to do is create like a campaign, and it's already registered. You put your name in there and then you send it to your friends, and all they have to do is just sign. And as they sign, it just imports it just emails your politician every single time.
If I can interrupt for a sec, I think, you know, that's one of the problems with petitions, is too easy, and it's maybe not showing real community will and buy-in. And I'm wondering, where is it that you say to yourself, wow, the community is really speaking here? Can you think of some examples and how it kind of made its way into your ears?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm one who I connect with local people, community. I make sure that if I'm moving a motion, everybody knows what motion I'm going to be moving. I try to get in the buy-in of people to be involved, and specifically people who don't normally engage in municipal politics, because a lot of people don't understand it. And then we frame it, we create communication letters for them sometimes, and you just share it, because sometimes people want to connect, but they don't know how to connect. You know, they don't know what kind of email they're going to send. Sometimes the email they send is too emotional, and then a counselor is not really interested in reading that emotional email anymore. Sometimes it can get a little personal. So if you're able to provide some type of I guess, guideline in which people can follow to engage and make it very easy and accessible. Today in 2020, we have a instant generation where we like everything to be instant and quick, and you don't want to spend too much time searching information. And a lot of times, like I said, language can be a barrier to a lot of people. So if you break it down in very easy language and you provide the numbers, you provide the statistics, and then you're able to share a messaging that they can communicate with their local counselors with, and they just email. So email, let me tell you something. Sometimes we can get 1,000 emails on one issue, and that, you know, you're going to pay attention to that issue if you have 1,000 emails in 1 hour and 1 day. It is literally the most frustrating thing, because it really messes up your entire email train. You can't catch anything you're trying to do. So I remember when we just had a recent campaign that we got a lot of engagement. We had at least 2,500 people engage into this specific issue, and it was so hard, because every single time they emailed, it would just throw all of my work all the way at the bottom, and I couldn't get my work done, and I had to sit down and rearrange my email and move it around. And so it gets you to pay attention to, like, what is happening? Why are we getting 10 emails or every 5 minutes, or 20 emails every 5 minutes on the same specific issue? You're going to pay attention. And I think one of the things that you said too, positively using the media is important. But sometimes disrupting business as usual is also very, very effective and important. I think for me, the only advice I would give to people based on my experience and the experience of being on council with other councilors who we are all different and we don't have the same ways of approaching situations is making sure that you're being respectful goes a long way. I can listen to you if you're respecting me, as at the end of the day, a politician, behind the political face, there's a real human being who's got life to manage and a lot of different emotions to manage as well, and different things that are happening in their lives, and really your important issue can disappear out of the way because of the way that you're engaging with people. And I think perhaps moving forward, I found on this website that's been teaching people how to effectively engage municipally. There was an entire section on policies around communications. So maybe that's something that City Hall can also look at eventually, how to communicate. There should be a policy on communications between the community and councilors to keep things moving forward, because what we don't want is issues not moving forward because of the way that people are engaging, because it's sometimes their emotional issues, and the lack of response from different counselors who are not feeling safe or who are not feeling respected in a situation. Because like yourself, if you're not a counselor, you don't talk to anybody who's disrespectful to you. So I think it goes a long way understanding who you're talking to and building relationships. So I wanted to say this when Kate was talking about one of the successful ways of connecting with counselors is, at the end of the day, relationship matters. And it's important to build relationships with people. And it's not just from the political side, it also has to be from the community side as well. I think we have to be intentional about what we're doing. If we're really trying to be placemaking and creating connected communities, we also have to critically think about the way that we engage with people and the kind of relationships that we want to have with people. I may disagree with you, but I will respect you. And most people say I don't have to like you, but I should like you if I want to build really community with you. We should like each other. We should learn to like each other. We should learn to understand that we're all very complex and different and are made up with different DNAs, but we should try and like each other. We should try and respect one another into building those relationships. And I'm finding that a lot more younger and progressive people who are getting elected across North America is really because of the relationships that they've built in the community. You can have someone who hasn't really been in politics for 50 years, but just got elected because they actually understand the importance of building relationships. So sometimes issues can win. You can win an issue at council because of the down top tyranny situation, and sometimes it's the other way. So in politics, we often talk about the top down tyranny, but we never talk about the down top tyranny, and that's where the community takes control of a situation and creates fear mongering within the staff system, within the political.
I'm familiar with that one. Yeah.
I'm familiar with it too, and it's not very pleasant. It's not lovely. It does not create positive engagement. It does not create, and you may get what you're looking for in terms of changing a policy or influencing a policy change, but you're not going to placemake. You're not going to build a community that's connected. You're not really building a city that is made for people and not for just business. So, and businesses are made of people. So we have to think about that.
What I'd like to do, if I could, because this is great advice, I'm wondering if we can go for a question. I see that there's some questions up, and let's see what we can get. I don't know if you've got something, Skylar, there that.
Sure. Yeah. I feel like this one's topical because you talked about how like your inbox will be flooded with 1,000 similar emails. So this one is somebody asking, when people are trying to request things that require immediate action, so like if somebody's trying to access a service, but they're experiencing barriers and they haven't heard back from their city councilor after 1 or 2 emails, what would you recommend that they do to try and resolve that?
Yeah, so I want to talk about that as well, because we have really engaged the community and we're teaching people, we're trying to to get people to start connecting with their city councilors. But we don't have the support system for the city councilors to continue to meet this high level engagement that we've created. Like I think I've said this before, I think I set up myself to fail because I want to be connected, I want to be able to be responsive, and I want to be able to do more, but I don't have the support systems in place for me to actually be successful at that. So sometimes you will send an email that I may not be able to see, especially on a busy day where we're getting 1,000 emails and they take a little while. We have, you know, a limited assistance support system. So we have 4 assistants per 14 counselors. It's a lot, you know, God bless them because they really do a lot of work. But what I would say is if you don't hear from your counselor, a week has gone by or 2 weeks has gone by, number one, they're not ignoring you. They really want to get to you, but there's a list of things in that email that they have to get through. Sometimes they really are experiencing a high volume of emails and it just throws you off completely and shuts down your email basically, which is disrupting business as usual. So I think perhaps resending an email or even making a phone call and leaving a voicemail or texting, sending a text message. We all have corporate cell phones that we use. And if you could just shoot a text message, depending on different people, you know, again, you got to build those relationships and understand how certain people work, but it's really trying to engage them as well as much as they try to engage with people and being understanding. This happens to me all the time. I'm downtown counselor. Downtown is not busy at all. That, you know, I'm joking, it's super busy that sometimes I miss a lot of things, and until someone resends that email or calls or texts, it can take some time before we can catch an email that has slipped. And we're not trying to ignore you. We just need to really think about, if we want a successful council, how do we also support that council to be able to be successful? And right now, that conversation has been a taboo in our community, talking about how to properly support counselors so that they can do their job properly. And we're in this time around, a lot of people are really engaged with their city councilors. We've really, and we keep working on ways to get City Hall to be more engaging and more communicative with the community, and to do in-reach to different communities as well who don't normally engage. But I think what we also need to focus on is how to support City Hall to make sure that City Hall has all the tools and resources to be able to meet that high expectation that we've set for ourselves.
It is high. So there you have it, folks. I think that's, you know, right from a counselor, you get a sense of what their world's like, what is effective in terms of a way to approach council and counselors. Are there any last thoughts real quick, because we need to move on to our next speaker? But Ariel, anything that I didn't touch on by way of a question that you would really like to get out there to the community to give them some insight on the best way to affect change and influence council, participate, collaborate, those sorts of things?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm sure all the people who are watching today are people who are normally engaged, but if you have a friend or a family member who has not really engaged in municipal politics before, I think you should just get them to at least know the name of their counselor, you know, get to see what they look like and who they are and what they sound like. Sometimes you don't even know what your representative really sounds like. You've never even seen them. I've been in instances before where someone will talk about me as if because they've never met me before. And then I'm like, it's me, you know, I'm the counselor. And then we have that discussion, and it's nice when they get to see your face and they get to hear your voice and they realize, oh my God, she's a person, she's real. And it's really great. And I think I would also encourage most elected officials to use their social medias, because we're in a technology time and a lot of things happen on social media, and there are so many different tools that we can all learn how to use to continue to engage the community in a very easy and accessible way for people who don't have the time to come to City Hall. In fact, I have never invited anybody to come to a meeting at City Hall and sit for those hours, because I would never want anybody to go through that. Sometimes it's a long time. But I invite everybody to send an email to their counselors. I invite everybody to call their counselors. And if they need talking points, if they need an email to send, I'm always happy with my team to provide that to people. And so connect with people through social media, call them, hear their voice, or meet them and go for coffee with them. I love going to coffee with my constituents. So
you get a lot of coffee requests out of this.
I love coffee.
so much for taking the time out today to chat with us. I know you've got a lot on your plate, and so very much appreciated, and thanks for all that insight. So I'd like to move now to a friend of mine that I'm working closely with these days, Dr. Jason Gilliland. And Dr. Jason Gilliland is a professor of geography, epidemiology, and biostatics, pediatrics, health sciences at Western University, director of the Urban Development Program at Western, and a scientist with the Children's Health Research Institute and Lawson Health Research Institute. Maybe easier to say what you're not doing as opposed to what you are, but just such a broad portfolio, and also detailed, deep in terms of how you're getting involved, Jason. An award-winning teacher and researcher who is known internationally for his research on urban planning and public health issues. And in 2020, he was named the Children's Health Foundation 2019 Scientist of the Year. Not a big deal. Yes, a big deal for his work identifying and overcoming barriers to children's physical activity. Jason, really happy to have you here today. And I note that you're also one of the sponsors of this event as the HEAL, which you're the director of.
Yeah, thank you, John, and thanks to the organizers for inviting me here. Yeah, that was a long bio, but perhaps the most important part is that I'm the director of the HEAL Lab, the Human Environments Analysis Lab at Western, and I've had a lot of really amazing students work with me over the years, and our job, really, our mission is to develop and connect those highly skilled researchers to create and share knowledge, share evidence to make healthy, thriving communities. And I've really been lucky to have since 2003, about 600 students work in the HEAL Lab with me, and thousands more work on projects and community-based.
Yeah. Kate's giving snaps, by the way. I don't know if you can hear us.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Thanks. So I've got a question for you, of course.
Okay.
And what I love about the work that you're doing and that I'm starting to get involved with is that it is very much fact-based. It's research. It's getting the hands dirty into the depth of understanding on issues. And so I'm wondering if you can think of one or two examples, and sorry to put you on the spot here a little bit, but some examples of any kind of community campaign or attempts to influence decision-making at the local level that involved fact kind of collection and analysis that you were involved in some way. Can you think of any?
Yeah, I just put my stopwatch on just so because I can think of dozens of them. Well, and over the past 17 years that we've been here, we worked on hundreds of them. But I think for the sake of time, I'll share two stories, two very different stories. The first is about the Carson Library. So in the fall of 2007, 13 years ago, I was contacted by some of my friends in the Old East Village, and I've done a lot of work with the community association there and the BIA, and they had feared that their neighborhood library, the Carson Library, was at risk of closing. And the library board was recommending reduction of hours and closing the library on certain days, so that they could redirect resources to some suburban branches that were more busy, I guess. And I think that decision I recall was primarily based on circulation stats. So I was informed of this issue, and to help out, I had a few of the students in my third year Geography 3461 Land Use and Development Issues class at Western, develop some student projects to examine how the library was being used. And one part of that study I think was really cool. It determined how the mode of transport to the library, how people were getting there. Because we learned that one of the arguments for closing the library that there was other libraries within driving distance. And there were within driving distance. But one of the students did a really cool study, and she tracked actually how people were getting there. And over many days, many weeks, weekends, weekdays, and her evidence showed that well over 75% of people were arriving on foot. And in fact, in particular, the heaviest users were parents arriving with babies in strollers. That was the biggest group. Those were the heaviest users. Those were the most people who came and the people who stayed the longest. Also, the most significant activities really didn't involve the circulation of books. but the library was being used as a community hub for formal and informal meetings. So community gatherings, story time type activities with moms and babies was one of the most popular, as well as using the computer. Now, this was 13 years ago, so not everyone probably had a computer, but so there were activities that really wouldn't be picked up on the circulation stats, and wouldn't be picked up by cars in the parking lot. So what was really cool about that was the students gathered evidence. They had a fairly rigorous study. And then in January of 2008, when the community association had their say at council, they brought the student data with them. And thankfully, the library was kept open. And so I thought, that was a really great little story. And to this day,
you bring facts to the table and you move from the library is closing because nobody's using it, there's no circulation, there's no cars in the parking lot, to this is being used as something totally different and it remains open.
Exactly.
Facts and evidence. That's fantastic. What's your second one?
Okay. This one's a little more controversial. So, and we flash forward 10 years, 2017. A few years ago, a section of Oak Ridge Acres was undergoing the usual road and sewer maintenance, and they had to rip it up. And according to policy, the city had plans to install sidewalks in this area, which previously had none. And this is an issue, as you know, that's an issue in some neighborhoods. But there were petitions on both sides for and against building the sidewalks.
Right.
Submissions had been made by citizens as well as many organizations, the school and the church and different groups. And so the councillor, being in a bit of a tight spot, he approached me for some more local evidence on the issue. He knew this was a subject that in an area for which I'd be working on for almost 2 decades internationally, as well as in London. So luckily,
yes, before you go on, everybody's saying we don't need sidewalks because nobody walks in our neighborhood.
That's right. So the petitions you're right, absolutely. The petitions things were like, I don't want to pick on anybody, but no one walks. No kids walk to school, so it doesn't matter. No one's been hit by a car. The sidewalks will bring in unmentionable people into the neighborhood, and it will hurt the animals, and it'll shorten our grass. So, and it won't leave me enough room to park all of my cars in the driveway. And also it'll narrow the street. The street is wide enough to get 2 Hummers, a fire truck, and an ambulance down all at the same time. So, really, and actually, the local Active and Safe Routes School Committee had put forward their proposal, saying that we want sidewalks, and lots of my students were involved in that group, and I've been involved in that group for 15 years. But actually, that one had a lot of evidence. That took the evidence from around the world, and academic studies said the importance of sidewalks. And but what the council really needed was that local evidence. So luckily, we had been collaborating with that regional ACERTS committee, Active and Safe Routes to School, for many years. We'd spent several days conducting activities with the kids and the parents of students in that local school. So luckily, we had been there. We'd done all our base surveys. By the way, we've surveyed about 200,000 Londoners over the years, but this time we surveyed the kids. We'd gone on walkabouts, maps of hotspots of problem areas. So we created really cool GIS density maps and hotspot maps, and we had long lists of the issues from the kids and long lists of the issues from the parents. And the parents were saying among the top, there are no sidewalks. Don't let my child walk to school because of the sidewalks, because of the fast cars, because of this, because of that. Basically, all of the issues that they had mentioned could have been solved with sidewalks. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them could have been solved with sidewalks. So this was the kind of evidence that the councillor needed to support the decision for installing the sidewalks. And years later, I think it looks great, and more kids are walking to school. We did the baseline and a follow-up, and sure enough, more kids are using active transportation to school, and so it's a win.
So the lesson that I'm hearing from you is, when you want to influence local decisions, if you can get some real data,
absolutely,
to compel people to really, and I think I heard Councillor Kayabaga say the same thing, that when there's information, there's some sort of evidence, it can really make a difference, so that a councillor is not out there on their own making a sort of gut feel kind of decision on something. Is that really what I'm hearing?
Absolutely, evidence matters. You can't to make evidence-based decision-making decisions, you need evidence, right? Evidence-based decision-making requires data to be collected, data to be processed and analyzed so that it becomes information, and information is power. And, you know, too many decisions are made based on quick Google searches, I think, or worse, I think statements like, I just know. And I think in the hierarchy of evidence, an epidemiologist will tell you, I just know is at the very bottom of the pyramid of quality evidence. And so, you know, Kate spoke about power. I'm pointing to you on my screen, Dr. Graham. Kate spoke about power, and I think evidence can empower communities that are often powerless in this decision-making, or they feel they're powerless. And so what's great for us is when we are able to help community, and especially on those great issues, like these are fundamental placemaking issues, saving a community library, a community purpose, getting sidewalks where we can walk and be physically active. Again, Dr. Gray mentioned put the issue on whether it's climate change or physical activity or whether it's economics. It's so yeah, I'd say data is powerful, evidence is powerful. And we need to do that more. And often we're asked, you know, we need a made in London solution, or we need London evidence. And that frustrates me a lot because, you know, we do systematic reviews of evidence and we find, you know, that we find out what will work, right? From hundreds of studies. So, you know, I think I should say to people, don't be afraid to talk to Western. I think everybody here has spoken or taught at Western. There's a lot of bright students looking for meaningful ways to contribute and give back to their community. So use us, reach out.
I think that's a great message. And I think that it's something that we do collectively as a community lean on Western and the colleges as well as Fanshawe College. But I think we should be doing a lot more. We've got right in our backyard people like you, the talented students that you're talking about, and that runs, you know, Kate and her students at both Western and Huron College, and many, many more. You know, the group that I'm working with Martin Horak and Zach and Godwin, yeah. These are the folks at the Center for Urban Policy and Local Governance, and wow, they've got so much insight and ability and interest, students that would love to have something that ties into a real world situation. And I want to put a plug in for City Studio, who is trying to do a good job of harnessing some of those resources that are out there, bring together some of the practical questions that the city has, and draw on those resources at the university. But I also want to point out that outside of City Studio is groups like yourself, that you're inside and outside, Jason, but this is wonderful that you're saying, hey, use us. We've got lots of people, and the Heal Lab's a great example. I've seen so much horsepower and intelligence there. So thank you for that. I wonder if there's any questions, Skylar, that we could direct at Jason?
I feel like it could be a Jason and a John question, but it was a question about the schematic of the graph web that you showed at the very beginning. And the question is, where in the web do experts on the issues fit? Are they part of the community consultation, or do they go somewhere else?
Jason, do you want to run with that? So in that kind of graphic that I was showing.
Yeah, well, it's your graphic, but if I recall correctly, I think they would fit on community consultation, but they can actually be, they can come in as on diagrams. We're not the confounding variable, but they could be, they could come in between any of the arrows. Like we could break in the arrow between the community and the city staff, or the arrow between the community and the city councilor. So we've been that person, we've been that group, every spot in there, right? So a community can hire an expert, or we can volunteer to go to city council, but city council has approached us for our expertise to then go back to the citizens to inform them of what's going on. So I say we really fit all over the place.
Right, and I think that even on that city staff lead part, that's where administration is trying to come up with a good recommendation. That's a great place. Am I sharing this? I'm trying to share it. So the city staff lead here, great place for us to be looking for experts to help us to develop a great recommendation to go to council with those facts that Ariel and her colleagues need to make a good decision.
Yeah. And I say that's really been the role of the HEAL Lab for the past 17 years as a community-based lab, community-engaged learning. So we give undergrads and grad students lots of opportunity to learn with practical studies. But then on the other hand, we've helped several hundred community groups and organizations, especially the city. We work a lot with the City of London. We run the ActiPass program. I don't know if you've heard about the Grade 5 ActiPass. So tens of thousands of kids have used that. So we love being engaged.
Explain what it does. What's the ActiPass do?
Oh yeah, so every child in grade 5 gets a free recreational access pass for the year, and for facilities at the City of London facilities and arenas and pools and the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club and lots of other partners. So this is all part of the Child and Youth Network, which is legendary, a really unique network in the world. I haven't seen anything as powerful and as effective as the CYN. And so for our relationship with them is then to give the evidence. So to study the effectiveness, and then we show, well, look, this pass has actually been effective at getting children to become more physically active. And so that's amazing. We love doing work like that, or with Ontario Student Nutrition Program, helping get fruits and vegetables into the classroom and looking at the effectiveness of that. And so those are the kind of big projects. We love working with community groups, and it's all about environments and making healthier environments and for people.
So for the folks that are participating today, you've got a counselor that's asking you to invite yourself to coffee, and you've got a professor that's asking you to bring his students into your problem solving. This is good value for money. So I am being a little bit whimsical here, but I want to say thanks, Jason, for taking the time out for what you do. I love the fact that your academic pursuits are very practical in nature, and are aimed at having impact on community. I think that's wonderful stuff.
Thank you.
I'd like to move to our next speaker now, and last but not least, is cliche we would say, is Dean Shepherd. And Dean is somebody that has been, boy, Dean, you've been involved in so much for so long. It's amazing. As an executive director, Reforest London, advocating for planting and saving more trees. Former member of the city's Ecological Planning Advisory Committee and chair. I remember very influential chair for a long time. Trees and Forest Advisory Committee. Dean has gained some firsthand experience, not some firsthand experience, a ton of firsthand experience in influencing city actions. I'd say you're a pro. Certainly, you and I work together a lot, and you influenced a lot of my work. So as somebody that then in turn is making recommendations to council, but I'm really interested, Dean, in some of your perspectives on the subject that we're talking about today. And can I just ask you first about this Speak for Trees campaign? How did that roll out? What did you do? What were some of the impacts in terms of local decision making around that?
Yeah, thanks very much. Everyone might be wondering why I look so crazy on my Zoom call. Right. I am happy to report I'm on a last minute week cottage rental outside of Huntsville, but the surprise was no Wi-Fi. No Wi-Fi at the cottage.
The Tesla rocket is where I was thinking.
You actually look like you're in a scary movie. I keep expecting a dog or something.
It's getting darker and darker. So anyway, so no Wi-Fi at the cottage, no reception or cell reception at the cottage. Can't use my hotspot. So I'm parked outside the Huntsville Public Library, which is shut, but their Wi-Fi is still going strong. Yeah. And I parked under a street light, which is not bright enough to really light me up. So the screen is my light, and that's why I look so crazy. But I'm delighted to be here. It's a great group of people to hear from. I've already been reminded of some great tips and tricks and some new ones as well. So yeah, I will tell you a little bit about our Speak for the Trees campaign. It ended up being 2 advocacy efforts, and I like the idea of advocacy effort better than campaign. Certainly a campaign is involved, but the goal isn't the campaign, right? It's the advocacy effort in itself. So in 2015, actually, it was city budget time, and the city had just finished their urban forest management strategy. So the very first really big urban forest management strategy the city had ever done. And like a lot of city strategies, great strategies sitting on the shelf waiting for some money. And it was budget time. So we decided that we would stand at budget time and rally, hopefully, the community to putting some money behind this new strategy a priority. You can understand how easily items like trees can be like, yeah, those are nice, but this other thing is more important today. Mm-hmm. So that happens to trees a lot. It happens to lots of things, but it happens to trees a lot. So our goal was to get council to agree that it was a priority to start the plan. We weren't asking for the moon. It was less than half of what was needed over the next few years, whatever the number was. But the point was to get the ball rolling and to put some money on the table. And they expect us to stand up as Reforest London and say more money for trees. And I heard Kate mention this before, is they need to hear it from more than just the regular suspects. And so we wanted the community to tell council how important this was. And so we did launch an effort, an advocacy campaign. We used all of our contacts. We asked them to take action. We kept the call to action simple. Right, I think that's one of the keys to activating your membership. They need to understand the simple thing you want me to do with a simple rationale so that I feel confident, not out on a limb, doing this action for you. And so we were asking them to attend a better build a budget session, or to tweet using the established City of London feedback hashtag for the budget. So the city was recording what was being tweeted and had to report back to the council what feedback they were gathering. And of course, email your councillors. So we had 3 actions people could pick from to suit them best. So I think having a suite of options is good. People can do them all, of course, that's great, but giving them some options to choose what feels best for them was really helpful. And we were in the lucky position too of not asking for money for ourselves. We were not standing up at budget time and saying, please give Reforest London $250,000. We were standing up and asking this city to put money behind its own council approved plan, which was just sitting on a shelf. So that was a very unique angle, and that helped us a lot, and that got some media attention as well, which of course also really helped council pay attention when there's story in the newspaper and the free press and the community news at the time. And they were talking about that angle. It's that, yeah, Reforest London is standing up and they're not asking for money for themselves. So we had a pretty good response, I think, from the public. Council certainly heard us. I stood up at the public participation meeting and did a slide presentation, which is allowed. If you don't know, you don't have to stand in the gallery on that awkward step and hope you don't fall over the microphone. You can be it's very awkward if you've never done it. You can be on the main floor and you can show some slides. You don't get more time, but at least you get some slides. And we did that. The short version of this story is, though our effort was really successful, we got a lot of traction. In the end, money, of course, was tight, and this was not something even on council's radar. So we were pushing it from off the radar to on the radar to hopefully across the funding line. Well, we only got halfway there. We got to be on the radar, but we didn't get across the funding line. We lost 8-6. Right. And so, but the next day, a councillor who was supportive had another idea of where to spend some public money or some available money, and there was a little bit of money put back in the pot. So then there was a financial win. It was small, but there was a financial win. And I think, so we did not have a really huge financial outcome, but we had a lot of really positive other outcomes. And all of those things really helped establish Reforest London's brand and really helped our mission. People were engaged. People were talking about trees. People were talking about how trees do many different things besides look good and make a nice street.
Yeah,
So
although you might not have gotten all the way across that goal line that you were trying to, you got way down the field. And certainly the next budget process that came around, we were able to get across the line. And so
absolutely, and I think that's a key part of the story, is that even though we failed the first time around, the first 4-year budget was almost next on the docket for the city, and we had already done an awareness campaign, an advocacy campaign. So second time around, we already had the tools and the experience and the messaging, and we knew what we were doing better than we did the first time, and we had primed the pumps at City Council about how important this was. One of the councillors had said during budget they heard from the public on trees more than any other item.
Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit for a second just about the relationship that you and I had, because I was in my office as a bureaucrat. The strategy, the urban forest strategy, was prepared, but as a bureaucrat, a lot of times your hands are tied. You know, you're part of a larger machine that is trying to figure out at budget time where our money is allocated. And so while I really, you know, you and I chatted about this, submissions might have gone forward, but what people don't understand is there's often work that goes on at the administrative level, which determines what's even presented to council. And some of the money fell off of the table. So I'm disclosing some things that you don't often hear about. But we had some conversations, and what you were doing on the other side of this equation is what you just described, which was getting the community, mobilizing the community to advocate for this through the budget process. Yeah. And as somebody that was a leader in administration, I was so appreciative of that, because while my hands were tied, I really wanted to see that strategy move forward, knew it was important for the future of the city and climate and a number of other things. To see you make that effort and to see you be effective, it's kind of that partnership. When we talked, I think Kate and others talked about these allies and champions. There are relationships that can be built between people that are on the outside of City Hall and people that are inside of City Hall at political and administrative levels that can really make a difference. And I think that you and I collaborated on a number of things, and we got places that we wouldn't have if we weren't tied in terms of our conversation and collaboration.
I think that's well described, and I take the opportunity to say how thankful I am to have had that opportunity to work with you, and how open and energetic you always were about making progress for this community. Always energetic about making community progress. Thanks for that.
I appreciate that, but you know what I was getting at was just for people that are listening is the relationship building that you can do. Yes. Really effective, and that goes with making connections with counselors, as Councillor Carey-Vega had said, but also thinking about different people in administration. Not a bad idea. The whole, coffee, beer and wine can make the world go around a little bit. So
yeah, you can imagine that Reforest London has a fair bit to do with urban forestry staff, right? We both basically have the same mission, and certainly urban forestry staff could not stand up and say the things to council that I could say. They could not mobilize the community like Reforest London could. So we were the other half of the equation in moving things down the field, and I really think there is incredible power in municipal and not-for-profit partnerships.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So I'm going to ask Skylar, are there any questions that directed Dean?
Yeah, I think this kind of touches on a couple people's topics. So maybe, John, I'll let you divvy it out. But question is, how do you walk the line between working with city staff and working with politicians when advocating for something? I feel like the approaches may be different for each, and it would be very important to maintain positive and constructive relationships with both. But how do you do it?
Okay, so Dean, you're the most recent speaker. We'll start with you, and then I'm going to see if there's anybody that would like to also step up and answer that question. Anybody on the panel?
Well, I would offer up that it's not the whole answer, but certainly part of the answer. You've already heard from others on this panel tonight. You need to talk to people and meet them where they're at. Counselors specifically have very specific ways of looking at things sometimes, staff likewise. And so that's where you need to start. And you could be having a completely different conversation with a staff member versus a counselor about the same topic, but it turns out to be a very different conversation, and that's fine. It shows that you are adapting to your audience.
Yeah, very good. Anyone else? Just go ahead if you've got any thoughts on that.
I think Ariel's point earlier about respect is key here. I think most people get into local government, whether you're staff or an elected official, because you want the community to be engaged and want to make changes in the place where they live. It's great when people step forward and have very strong opinions. So don't be shy about being a very strong advocate, even if you have a different opinion than the person you're talking to. I think most people want that even when they don't agree, so long as it's done in a respectful way. Once it crosses that line, you lose the room, I think, with politicians or with city staff. But as long as it's done respectfully, I think you can push as hard as you want. And I hope you'd find a very receptive audience with city staff and I think with elected officials too.
I'm going to add to that, and I'm not sure, Ariel, if you wanted to also contribute, but one thing I'd say that was related to that is trust. And so with respect and with a little bit of kind of track record in conversations and interactions, in particular where there's some testing points, you can understand whether you can trust somebody. And I'll tell you, there's lots of difficult situations that you can get yourself in as a staff member that you can totally avoid by just ignoring everybody and just putting your head down. Yeah. But if you're, as a staff member, wanting to really affect change and do it, being effective in trying to make a difference, you got to put yourself out there. But who do you want to put yourself out there with? Who do you want to be sort of an ally, collaborator with? Is it somebody that you've had the experience of them undermining you, criticizing you openly in public, not really sure how they're going to deal with something, or somebody that is trustworthy, as I say, that you feel that, yeah, I can understand. I've got some pretty good confidence that we can work together. I'm not talking about in any nefarious ways, but I think everybody wants to feel that they've got some security in who they're working with. Harold, did you have any thoughts, or Jason?
Oh, in my position, oh, sorry, go on, Ariel.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I just say I'm not one who really has to lobby councillors or city staff, but I've worked closely with city staff. And you're absolutely right, John. It's building trust, and I think you build a good relationship and be helpful. And thankfully, I have a wonderful councillor in my neighborhood, and so I would feel respected if I shared my feelings or had issues. Luckily, I haven't had to get my back up with my counselor because he makes good decisions.
Ariel, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I'm just going to be on the other side of this conversation as well, just because I was reading some of the Q&As. I've responded to a couple of them. Someone did ask a question about if they're not outgoing, how could they still, but they have, very important opinions and comments they want to make, but they're not really outgoing and they don't want to do public speaking. And I think I was just typing as this question was being answered, do one-on-one, call the person and ask them if you can meet them one-on-one or have like a Zoom call or a phone call. But I also just want to say that, we're a somewhat privileged group of people here who have access to these people, who have access to municipal councillors, who have access to a lot of things that not everybody in our community has access to. So I want to also say, I think it's important that community groups also trust themselves and build relationships among themselves and build networks and organizing that works for them and that is safe for them. And if there could be a time where you can have, out of 15 people on council where you don't have one relationship, and there's no one person in your community who has that relationship because of the differences in different communities. And we are trying to build connected communities, but we're not there yet. We're trying to build an equitable city, but we're not there yet. We still have lots of barriers to many, many different things at the City of London. Even public spaces are not super accessible to everyone. A lot of services that we offer are absolutely not accessible to everyone. So some people don't even know who works at City Hall, what they do and who they are. So we don't have the same level of networking. So for the people who are not part of that group of people who have the connections to people and have access and can build those relationships, I think it's important to organize among yourselves and trust yourself and build those relationships amongst yourself, and then have representative people who can speak on your behalf, but at the same time, always make sure that your voice is heard. And if things get confrontational, there's nothing wrong with, disrupting business as usual, because that has been proven to bring about change. And we also have to be aware that elected officials are elected by people. And if you do not like your elected official, or you do not, liking is a bit too small. I'm going to say, if you do think that your elected official is being harmful to your community, you need to do something about it. And your voice at that point will probably not be listened to by the person who you're trying to get a point across. And there are times where groups of people reach out to elected officials and have a hard time, and there's a lot of barriers. So in that time, you need to really disrupt business as usual and use every single tool that you can get to get your voice across, because sometimes, again, the top-down tyranny can come in effect in different communities, just like I said earlier, that the down-top tyranny can also happen. So make sure that you are protecting yourself, your family, your community, and you need to do whatever it takes to keep that going as well. So if you don't have the right representation, vote. Fight for the right representation. If you don't have the right people understanding or speaking the same language that you're speaking for your community, do something about it. And sometimes those people may not be willing to listen to you. So that's when you got to be unconventional about it. But the conventional way is build a relationship, try to connect with people, call your counselors, email your counselors, and do what you need to do. But at the end of the day, change happens at the ballot box.
Love it. I appreciate the alternative perspective. Oh yeah, Kate. Oh,
I was just thinking, there is a new shirt by Madam Premier in honor of Ariel that says "Change happens at the ballot box." So that's a good line.
That's a great one. Fantastic. Okay, so you know what? I was supposed to be at 8:25 at this point. Not bad. It's 8:27 on my computer. We've got a little bit more, so please don't tune out yet, folks.
There's a prize. Sorry, I just find that keeps people for the last 3 minutes.
Right, we've got a surprise. That's great. No, yeah, we have a door prize.
We have a door prize.
Oh,
okay.
Right, not a surprise, but a door prize. Okay, so over to you for
door prize time.
The commercial for the Urban League, which is incredible in putting this together. Go ahead.
Yes, awesome. All right, I'm going to quickly share my screen. But for those who don't know me, I work at the London Environmental Network, but I also sit on the board of the Urban League of London, which is why I'm here today. And I just wanted to quickly share my screen for two reasons. One, if you haven't heard of us or haven't checked us out, the Urban League is a nonprofit that's been around for 50 years, and we are an umbrella group that supports community groups and neighborhood associations across the city. We're always trying to reach out to new communities that we don't have relationships with and bring them kind of on board with some of the work that we're doing and find out ways that we can support them. We give out mini grants, so there's always a little bit of money. So if you join, you can apply to do some cool stuff in your community. And we do a lot of advocacy. So if you are interested, I'd say definitely sign up for a newsletter. We will also be posting soon a municipal action toolkit, which kind of summarizes some of the stuff that we're talking about in this session and different ways for people to get involved, whether it's speaking at a public participation meeting, emailing their counselor, organizing a protest. We are supportive of all of those different concepts, and we'll be providing a toolkit that people can use locally. So check us out. We are doing Zoom meetings end of the month, last Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. So our next one will be at the end of October. Again, sign up for a newsletter and then you'll get in the loop for those. And then the only other thing I wanted to add was it's prize time. So I just did people's first names, and whoever's at the top.
Skylar, I just have to put one quick comment on the board, which is
okay.
Relating to the Urban League. I was in an Ontario Municipal Board hearing today, and the board chair, which would be kind of like the judge sitting at the front, said this very thing, said, you would need to be living under a rock to not know who the Urban League is. And I thought, wow, that's
awesome.
A real big credit to the league that a member of the Ontario Municipal Board, are now called the LPAT, that they would speak that way about the presence of the Urban League.
That's wonderful.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and we're just all community groups. We're all volunteers. We all like people, so we're friendly.
That's the prize.
Yeah, everyone has to start a community association when they leave. That's the prize for all of you. No, the prize is $50 to downtown London. So
whoa, wow.
$50 downtown dollars. So I put everyone's name into here, and whoever's at the top wins it. And we have your email if you registered, which you did because you got the link. So randomize.
Drum roll.
Jordan B. I'm writing it down, and then I'm gonna write down your last name. Are you? Well, I guess you can't tell us Jordan B if you're still here, but I'm gonna look and see in the attendee list if you are. And if you are, I'm gonna email you so that you can get 50 downtown dollars. Okay, here we go. I got it.
All right.
Perfect. That's it for me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Skylar. And thanks for all you do for the Urban League, London Environmental Network, for the city as a whole. Yep, snaps.
Snaps.
And thank you, John, for coming and doing this session. We knew that you'd have lots of good insight. And I feel like we like having you back. Don't leave.
Well, I really enjoyed it. What a wonderful panel. I want to say thanks to the panel. You folks are amazing. It's just so good to know you. I've been blessed to have worked with you prior to the event here, but just hearing you today, learned some new things, excuse me, about you and about your thoughts, and that was great. And I hope that the folks at home, I'll look into the camera. I probably should have been doing this the whole time. I hope you got some insights today, some new bits of information. I think the worst thing that could happen is that you feel overwhelmed about this. It's not something that should be overwhelming. It's something that has some complexity to it, but there are lots of people, a really strong network at the league, and lots of people to help you work through this. So you're already as a community doing amazing things, and there's opportunity to do even more. So I encourage you to keep going, and thanks for attending today. So with that, Skylar, is there anything that I missed before we sign off?
No, that was lovely. Thank you so much.
Okay, folks, thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I hope your battery isn't dead.
No, I know. I have like this much left. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
See you.
Bye. Have a good night.